Thank you very much for the invitation to speak today. It's a great pleasure to be here with you to talk about a topic I'm really passionate about, and that is plant-based nutrition for cancer. So my name is Dr. Shireen Kassam and I'm presenting to you from the UK. Just a little bit about me. I'm a consultant haematologist, mainly looking after people with lymphoma. I'm also a certified lifestyle medicine physician. Outside of my usual paid role, I am founder and director of a community interest company called Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. And this is an organisation dedicated to providing education and advocacy on healthy plant-based diets for both individual and planetary health. I'm also co-founder of an organisation that provides lifestyle medicine services to patients and clients called Plant-Based Health Online. And I also provide education at the University of Winchester on plant-based diet. So I run an online course, which I'll come back to at the end. And I've been vegan since 2013. So what I hope to cover today is a description of the role of nutrition and lifestyle for cancer prevention, and then discuss the impact of nutrition and other lifestyle approaches for improving quality of life and survival after a cancer diagnosis. As I've said, my own specialty is looking after people with lymphoma, but I'm not really going to spend any time on that today. But if you are interested in the impact of diet on the risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, then I wrote a review back in 2019 for the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention, and that's available online on the website for free. What I am going to cover today are some of the questions my patients ask me. And they commonly ask, is it something I did? Is it genetic? Is there anything I can do to improve my chances? And what about supplements? So just a little bit of background. Cancer is the second leading cause of death globally, with 1 in 6 deaths caused by cancer. In the UK, 1 in 2 people born after 1960 will develop cancer in their lifetime, and the commonest sites for us are lung, breast, prostate and colorectal cancer. At most, the genes we inherit from our parents contribute to 10% or even less of cases of cancer, whereas in contrast, most international organisations agree that 40% of cases of cancer, if not more, are preventable if we were to adopt healthy lifestyle behaviours. Now, cancer in India is slightly different. The incidence is lower than the global statistics, and there may be a number of reasons for this. Until recently, communicable diseases were much more prevalent and resulting in death, and also the recording of cases of cancer may not be as robust as other high-income countries. But we do know from a very recent reference that the incidence of cancer is rising, and it's predicted to rise by 12% from 2020 to 2025, and 3 times more people are living in ill health due to cancer-related issues since 2004. And also the sites of cancer are different in India. So you can see in this table on the left for men, the commonest sites are lung, mouth, esophagus, stomach and liver, and clearly lung cancer is caused predominantly by tobacco smoking, and for women it is breast, cervix, ovarian, lung and gallbladder cancer. And for the majority of cases in Western countries, lifestyle and environmental factors are much more important when it comes to cancer prevention than genetic factors. And here is an infographic from Cancer Research UK stating that 4 out of 10 cases, if not more, could be prevented if we paid attention to these lifestyle factors: avoiding smoking, maintaining a healthy weight, eating plenty of fruits and vegetables, sensible rather than excessive exposure to the sun, avoiding alcohol consumption and regular physical activity. In contrast, in India, the statistics show that maybe up to 70% of cancer cases could be prevented, and the main risk factors in India are tobacco smoking, infections such as hepatitis B, hepatitis C, alcohol consumption, unhealthy diets and physical inactivity. So what about a focus in on diet? So globally, every year there's about 1 million cancer deaths per year due to poor diet, and 20 million years lost in disability or premature death due to dietary risk factors and cancer. And globally, the main problems are our diets are too high in sodium, reflecting our diet that's high in processed and prepackaged foods. It's too low in fibre, insufficient in fruit, vegetables, whole grains and beans, which are the healthy foods known to prevent cancer. And in general, they're too high in processed and red meat. And this is less of relevance to the populations in India, but meat consumption does seem to be increasing. So it's just worth reminding everyone that actually processed red meat, such as sausage and bacon and salami and so forth, has been classified by the WHO as a group 1 carcinogen. It causes cancer. And then red meat as a probable carcinogen. It probably causes cancer. So there are slightly different issues with the current diet in India, and certainly with the diets in South Asians living in the UK. Excessive meat consumption is not a major issue, although meat consumption is slowly increasing as we become reliant on more fast food and processed foods. Diets in India can of course be low in calories, and protein tends to not be too varied. It tends to be very reliant on refined grains and cereals, so white polished rice and white flour, and tends to be insufficient in the healthy plant foods, fruits, vegetables and beans, nuts and seeds. And so really variety is key, whereas a lot of the Indian diet is centred around cereals and grains. So these are the cancer prevention guidelines from the World Cancer Research Fund. So be a healthy weight, because carrying excessive weight is now second only to tobacco smoking as a cause of cancer, with around 5 to 6% of cancers globally caused by excessive weight. Be physically active. Eat a diet rich in whole grains, vegetables, fruits and beans, because these are the only foods that have been associated with cancer prevention and also promote good health in general. Limit the consumption of fast food and processed foods, and this is mainly due to its impact on increasing other chronic conditions and carrying too much weight. Limit, I would say avoid red and processed meat. There's no place for this in the diet. Limit consumption of sugar sweetened beverages, really because this also contributes to consumption of excess calories, overweight and obesity and other chronic conditions like type 2 diabetes. Limit alcohol consumption. I would say avoid. There's no need to consume alcohol, and we can make better choices for cancer prevention. Do not use supplements for cancer prevention, and I'll come back to that, but essentially we should be getting our nutrients from healthy plant foods. For mothers, breastfeed if you can, and that's because there's advantages for mum with a reduced risk of breast cancer, but also for baby with reduced risks of overweight and type 2 diabetes in the future. And of course, follow these healthy habits. If you have a diagnosis of cancer, if you've completed treatment for cancer, and the guidelines make clear that these healthy habits are good for preventing our other common conditions such as cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. There's a great summary review published in 2020 by the American Cancer Society on diet and physical activity for cancer prevention. I'll urge you to read this, but I've summarised the data, which really is just repeating the advice from the World Cancer Research Fund. So really eat a predominantly plant-based diet, and this can be exclusively plant-based or vegan if you want it to be, as long as it's healthy and full of whole plant foods. Avoid the red and processed meats, sugar sweetened beverages, processed foods, alcohol and tobacco smoking, and be a healthy weight with regular physical activity. I'll come back and discuss dairy a bit later. There may be a signal that it is useful to reduce the exposure to pesticides and herbicides in the foods we eat, but really more importantly it's better to focus on eating plenty of fruits and vegetables, whatever you have access to. Coffee may reduce the risk of certain cancers. It's not strong evidence, but it's certainly possible evidence, and that's related to liver and esophageal cancer. And other lifestyle factors like adequate sleep is important. We know that night shift workers have increased risk of cancer. Soya foods are a great addition to the diet with reduced risk of various chronic conditions like type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease, but also reduces the risk of certain cancers with stronger evidence for reduction in breast cancer and prostate cancer. I've added green tea tea here. It's not in this particular guideline, but there's some compelling evidence that regular consumption of green tea can reduce the risk of certain cancers. And here's a list of things that were reviewed and exposures that were discussed in this paper, but don't seem to currently either increase or decrease the risk of cancer. And so it's good to see that the India Cancer Society also has very similar guidelines for preventing cancer. Do not smoke or chew tobacco, limit alcohol consumption. I would say avoid alcohol consumption. Eat plenty of fruit, vegetables and grains, and I would add in there plant sources of protein such as legumes, beans, soya, nuts, seeds. Do not be overweight. Lead an active life and exercise, and sleep for a minimum of 7 hours a day. So really sensible evidence-based advice. And we know that this advice really works. So the guidelines from the World Cancer Research Fund were put to the test in this in the analysis of 2 Swedish prospective cohorts with over 50,000 men and women who were followed for 15 years. And during that time, there were over 12,000 cancers reported. And they looked at the association between adherence to the World Cancer Research Fund recommendations and the risk of cancer. Now, this population wasn't particularly healthy. Most people were not taking the advice of the International Cancer Prevention Guidelines. But what they were able to show was that every additional healthy habit that was acquired, there was about a 3 to 4% lower risk of cancer. And those participants that were most adherent to the recommendations had a 15% reduction in overall risk of cancer during this 15-year follow-up. And so you can imagine that if people were more adherent and really did stick to the guidelines, we could be preventing 40 to 50% of cases of cancer. Similarly, there's been a number of studies that show that lifestyle factors are really more important than genetic factors. And as I say, there's been studies supporting this statement for breast cancer, prostate cancer, and various other common cancers. But I've just chosen a recent study from our UK Biobank cohort, which looked at the risk of colorectal cancer and analysed lifestyle factors, but also genetic factors to see what was most important and whether you could modify the genetic risk by adhering to a healthy lifestyle. So the healthy lifestyle score in this paper was based on the World Cancer Research Fund guidelines that I showed you earlier, and then they created a polygenic risk score from 95 different genetic risk variants, and they were basically able to show that healthy lifestyles significantly reduce the risk of colorectal cancer in all genetic groups, but the greatest impact was seen in those at high genetic risk, with a 42% reduction in colorectal cancer risk. So much so that the authors concluded our study provides strong evidence to support lifestyle modifications for colorectal cancer primary prevention. So what I came to late in my career as a doctor, and I'm sure many of you are aware of, that really lifestyle medicine and using lifestyle medicine approaches has so many benefits for our individual health and increasingly for the health of people around us, so the planet and also the animals we share this planet with. And so lifestyle medicine, which was a specialty created by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, formed in 2004, really pays attention to 6 healthy lifestyle habits, or 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine as it's called: healthy nutrition, regular exercise, avoiding tobacco and alcohol, stress management, adequate sleep, and fostering healthy relationships. And the reason why that this is so important is because lifestyle interventions really get to the root cause of a number of chronic diseases, and many diseases, including cancer, share in common these alterations which then lead to inflammation. So you can see in yellow that unhealthy lifestyles can lead to microbiome alterations, what we call dysbiosis or unhealthy gut bacteria, adverse epigenetic changes. They can cause cellular stress and injury, which leads to inflammation, which ultimately leads to the list of chronic conditions on the right, so type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease and cancer. But if we intervene with lifestyle interventions, we can reverse this inflammation and improve our gut health, modify gene expression and reduce cellular stress and injury, and consequently reduce inflammation. So the American College of Lifestyle Medicine have a position statement on a healthy diet, and what they recommend is an eating plan based around minimally processed vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds. So very much a plant-based diet, and really a healthy diet should look like this. You can see on the plate on the right that half the plate is fruits and vegetables, a quarter is whole grains, and a quarter is protein from plant sources such as beans, lentils, chickpeas, pulses, nuts and seeds, and mainly water for thirst, and of course adding lots of herbs and spices, which is not challenging in an Indian diet, really for flavour but also for the healthful properties. And this is what is referred to as a whole food plant-based diet, and this really is a great choice for preventing cancer. So we've had quite a lot of studies now from at least high-income countries like the UK and the US, looking at healthy lifestyle factors and the impact it can have on cancer prevention. So this is a report from the Nurses Health Study and the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study that analysed healthy lifestyle factors in more than 170,000 men and women followed for more than 30 years. And what they looked at was 5 healthy lifestyle factors: smoking, healthy weight, healthy diet, regular physical activity, moderate rather than excessive alcohol consumption. And on the right you can see a table where a healthy diet was high in healthy plant foods and omega-3 fatty acids, which you can get from flax seeds and walnuts and chia seeds, for example, and is also present in fish. A healthy diet was low in red and processed meat, sugar-sweetened beverages, and processed foods in general, so generally being low in trans fats and salt. So what they were able to show after 30 years of follow-up is that if you had the best diet, you could reduce your risk of dying from cancer by 30%. If you had the best diet, you could also, as a happy side effect, reduce your risk of dying from cardiovascular disease by 33%. But if you had all 5 healthy lifestyle factors, you could reduce cancer death by 65% and cardiovascular death by 82%. And what they were able to show is that at the age of 50, men and women who were adopting all of these 5 healthy lifestyle factors lived 12 to 15 years longer in good health compared to those who were not following a healthy diet and lifestyle. So what about diet and cancer? Well, we have studies specifically looking the impact of various diet patterns on the risk of cancer. And the 2 major cohorts studies that we have that look at particularly vegetarian and vegan and the risk of chronic conditions are one from the US called the Adventist Health Study 2 and one from the UK called the EPIC Oxford Study. And when you look at the rates of cancer in these populations, there's a clear reduction in cancer in both vegans and vegetarians, with vegans having an advantage of reduction of risk of cancer in the order of 16 to 19%. We've got a more recent analysis from the UK Biobank study, which also included South Asian participants as well. And what they were able to show was that meat-free diets, whatever diet you're following, but if it did not have meat in it, so vegetarians essentially lowered their risk of cancer by 14%, but there was particular advantages for reduction in breast cancer in women, which was reduced by 18%, and prostate cancer in men reduced by 31%. We have a study from France, particularly looking at the impact of eating the healthy plant foods that are shown in the plate in the right. So people who were consuming more fruits, vegetables, whole grains and legumes reduced their overall risk of cancer by 15%. So this percentage of around 15% reduction with a healthy plant-based diet seems to be consistent across different study cohorts. Now, just a word on dairy, because some diets in India and certainly South Asians in the UK consume a lot of dairy, thinking that it is healthy in the diet. But actually, we could make so many better choices for our health. it would be much more advantageous to swap out dairy for soya milk, for example. The reason why in the cancer world dairy is considered healthy is because there is an association between dairy consumption and a reduced risk of colorectal cancer, but it's quite clear that this is because of the calcium. It's nothing special about dairy, and so we can get calcium from healthier sources like beans and greens. Because dairy consumption has a fairly strong association with an increased risk of prostate cancer in men, and may also increase the risk of hormone-driven cancers in women, such as breast and endometrial cancer. But if we remove dairy and swap it, for example, for soya milk, studies have shown that we can reduce the risk of breast cancer by 32% and prostate cancer by 70%. And so really the bottom line is we do not need dairy in the diet. We can make better choices for so many reasons, including cancer prevention. Now, a word on alcohol, and I know that many people in India are not consuming much alcohol, but there's mixed messages from peer-reviewed literature. But when it comes to cancer, there is no safe amount of alcohol to consume. So this is straight from the cancer prevention guidelines from American Cancer Society. It's best not to drink alcohol. Now, there's a prevailing myth that it might be good for heart health, but again, the World Heart Federation have just brought out a report stating that this is a myth, that actually consuming alcohol creates more harm for heart health than any potential benefits. And evidence is accumulating that this is probably the case for brain health as well, with any level of alcohol consumption leading to shrinkage of the brain and decline in cognitive function. Another area that's not discussed enough, in my view, when it comes to cancer prevention is that other chronic conditions like heart disease, cardiovascular disease, in general, renal failure, type 2 diabetes, all increase the risk of cancer because of those shared mechanisms of disease development. And so this study showed very clearly in a population of more than 400,000 Taiwanese participants followed for more than 8 years, that about a third of the risk of dying from cancer came from underlying chronic conditions, and another third came from unhealthy lifestyle habits. So really preventing other chronic conditions will reduce our risk of cancer, and that's really key for us from Indian origins, because we know that South Asians have a double the risk of cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes compared to white populations, and this occurs 10 years earlier than in the white populations. So what about lifestyle interventions during cancer treatment? Now, this is an evolving area, but we know that, healthy dietary intakes with fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts and seeds is a really great approach. We're learning that one of the reasons why sticking to a plant-based diet may be really important during cancer treatment is because of the beneficial impact on the gut microbiome. Now, this is a big topic in itself, and you'll all know that we have trillions of organisms in our gut, and we have learnt most about the bacteria. And these bacteria feed on dietary components, and I've listed there the dietary components of fibre, polyphenols and fermented foods, and essentially a variety of healthy plant foods. The more plant foods we have in the diet, the healthier our gut bacteria are. And they use this fibre to create these metabolites or signalling molecules called short-chain fatty acids, which go on to stimulate the immune system and also communicate with other organs. And these short-chain fatty acids and the impact on the immune system reduces the risk of cancer, but can also affect our response to anti-cancer treatments. So we've had a few studies now showing us that the healthier gut microbiome is associated with better treatment response and longer remission from certain cancer therapies known as immunotherapies, those therapies that really harness the power of our immune system to fight back against the cancer. And one study showed that for every 5-gram increase in dietary fibre, this resulted in a 30% lower risk of progression or death from that cancer, and that most of the research has occurred in people being treated for melanoma. And essentially that means that we need to increase the amount of plant foods in our diet, and the fibre is crucial to creating a healthy gut environment and fostering our healthy gut bacteria. And this paper is excellent if you haven't seen it already. The gut microbiome, what the oncologist ought to know. And what's clear is that through dietary interventions, we might be able to improve outcomes from cancer treatments. And you can see there that the dietary interventions recommended are plenty of plant foods, ideally 30 or more different species per week, polyphenols, which are found in the dark-coloured fruits, vegetables and other plant foods, dietary fibre, which is only found in plant foods, and fermented foods. It's useful to add in fermented foods in the diet on a daily basis if you can. It's things like kimchi and sauerkraut, and even fermented soya foods are useful as well. Now, just a word or a reminder about dietary restrictions, especially during cancer therapy, that might reduce the neutrophil count or the white cell count. And it's been convention that people on anti-cancer treatments are told to be very careful about what they consume and wash the fruit and vegetables and only eat fruits and vegetables that you can peel. And it really leads to quite a restrictive diet when there isn't actually much evidence for this. And of course, we know that most foodborne infections actually come from the consumption of animal foods rather than plant-based foods. But when there's been a meta-analysis conducted back in 2019, the results were quite clear. There's no evidence to support the use of neutropenic diet or other food restrictions in neutropenic patients with cancer. And this has been reiterated by a more recent guideline from the American Society of Cancer, the American Society of Clinical Oncology, so ASCO. So what about supplements for cancer prevention? Well, the key recommendation is really we should be getting our nutrients from food wherever we can. Now, if you're on a fully plant-based diet, we need to be taking a supplement of vitamin B12. So depending on where you live and if you're getting enough sunshine or not, you might need to take a vitamin D supplement. You also need to pay attention to where you're getting iodine in the diet when you're on a plant-based diet. But again, that's of concern for all diet patterns. But we shouldn't be taking higher doses than required of any supplement, because sometimes it can cause harm and certainly can interact with anti-cancer treatments as well. And again, as a word of caution, some studies have indeed shown worse outcome for people who are undergoing cancer treatment with chemotherapy if they're taking higher doses of antioxidants, because it counteracts some of the effects of the chemotherapy agents. So really need to check with your cancer doctor or cancer pharmacist if you're taking over-the-counter supplements. The one exception to that I would suggest would be vitamin D. I think it's really useful to make sure that everyone in whatever diet pattern you're consuming, wherever you are in the world, that you are getting enough vitamin D. So that could be from sunlight if you've got good exposure, but for me in the UK most of the year we aren't able to get enough sunlight, and a supplement is required, because there's some evidence that if you have the vitamin D level in the normal range compared to low levels, that this might reduce your risk of dying from cancer after a cancer diagnosis. It doesn't seem to have an impact on the actual incidence of cancer. So what about lifestyle approaches after a cancer diagnosis and once you've had the diagnosis and after you've completed treatment? Now, many of you will know the work of Dr. Dean Ornish, and he conducted a seminal study in men with early stages of prostate cancer, and often you don't need any treatment up front for prostate cancer, so people carry on living their lives with regular monitoring from their doctors. So he took 93 men in this situation and randomized them to a low-fat plant-based diet, stress management, group support and physical activity in his lifestyle trial, and compared them to half the group that just carried on their usual advice from their physicians. And what he looked at the outcomes after 1 year and 2 years. And what he was able to show was that after 1 year in the intervention lifestyle group, that the prostate-specific antigen level came down, whereas in the usual care group, the PSA level went up. Now, these changes are small, albeit statistically significant, but what's more important is that after 2 years, about a quarter of the control group had to go on and have surgery or radiotherapy, and that was compared to only 5% in the lifestyle group. So this intervention with lifestyle habits and plant-based diet was beneficial for bringing down prostate-specific antigen and also stabilizing the disease and preventing progression. In a separate study, he was able to show why this might be happening. And so in the left-hand graph, you can see that in people with prostate cancer, this lifestyle intervention led to increased activity of the enzyme telomerase in the white cells in the blood. And this means that you've probably got lengthening of the caps of the chromosome known as the telomeres. And on the right-hand side, these are prostate cancer biopsies before on the left and after on the right, showing a change in gene expression with changes in over 500 genes, with cancer suppressor genes being turned on and cancer promoting genes being turned off after 3 months of the lifestyle intervention. So pretty remarkable, really. We've had a recent study published in JAMA looking at just purely exercise intervention in 52 men with early stage prostate cancer, and this was high intensity interval exercise 20 minutes 3 times a week, so not too arduous. And again, they were able to also show that this could reduce the level of prostate specific antigen. So really it's a combination of healthy diet and other lifestyle habits. Similarly, we have information from a large cohort study in postmenopausal women, the Women's Health Initiative, that looked at women who developed breast cancer during the course of the study, and they showed that people who were consuming more fruits, vegetables and whole grains were able to reduce their risk of death from breast cancer. So it's really important about the choice of diet you make even once you've finished treatment for cancer. Similar observations made in colorectal cancer. When this study looked at the diet before and after a diagnosis of colorectal cancer, what they were able to show was that individuals consuming more plant foods and lower amounts of animal foods before and after the diagnosis had longer survival. Now, I'm just going to remind you how important regular physical activity is. Here in the UK, South Asian women are some of the most inactive in the population. We're not good at doing regular physical activity, but it is so important, and we know it reduces the risk of 13 different types of cancer. It improves quality of life for people living with cancer and also improves survival after a diagnosis of cancer. One of the common things my patients complain about is what they call chemo brain while they're having treatment and for a period after treatment, where they find that everything, their concentration is not good, their memory is not good, their brain feels foggy, and it's not a well described condition, but it's probably related to sort of the inflammation and oxidative stress that's going on from the cancer treatment. But this study was able to show that both physical activity before and during the chemotherapy prevents that decline in cognitive function, so has a role in preventing what is described as chemo brain. And there's been a very recent update from the American Society of Clinical Oncology called Exercise, Diet and Weight Management During Cancer Treatment. It reiterates that a healthy diet is important, but when it comes to exercise, it says exercise interventions during active treatment reduce fatigue, cardiorespiratory fitness, physical functioning and strength, and in some populations will improve quality of life and also reduce anxiety and depression. So really nothing to lose, because regular physical activity also reduces your risk of other chronic conditions like heart disease and type 2 diabetes. We must remember that the treatments that we give for people with cancer are likely to have long-term side effects. So certainly in my practice for lymphoma, when we say people are cured from the lymphoma, we're still left with the increased risk of cardiovascular disease and second cancers that arise due to the treatment we've given. And we need to really emphasize the importance of healthy diet and lifestyle for cancer survivorship. And so you can see here one study looking at people with breast cancer who were on tamoxifen, and we know that tamoxifen increases the risk of fatty liver, and this systematic review and meta-analysis was able to show that there's a 3 times increased risk in fatty liver for women with breast cancer who are taking tamoxifen. But the study also showed that the main risk factors were an increased or BMI, so carrying too much weight, and high cholesterol, which are easily addressed through a healthy plant-based diet and other healthy lifestyles. This large analysis from the UK Biobank cohort looked at 35,000 people with cancer, and they followed them for 14 years, and they looked at the impact of 5 healthy lifestyle factors on how well they were in their general health after a diagnosis of cancer. And they looked at these 5 healthy lifestyle factors of not smoking, adequate sleep, healthy diet, regular physical activity, and moderate rather than heavy alcohol consumption. And they were able to show was that all of these healthy lifestyle factors together could reduce the future risk of cardiovascular disease by 44% and type 2 diabetes risk by 38%. And each healthy lifestyle factor reduced your risk by about sort of 10 to 13%. And of course, these same healthy lifestyle factors would reduce the risk of second cancers as well. So, I'm not one for recommending individual foods or talking about superfoods, but when it comes to the science around diet and cancer prevention, there's some foods that really sort of stand out that's worth incorporating into the diet on a daily basis. So there's plenty of good data for supporting incorporating minimally processed soya foods such as tofu, tempeh, edamame, soya milk. Cruciferous vegetables really are coming out top when you're thinking of anti-cancer vegetables. Mushrooms are really healthy. Red-coloured fruits and vegetables such as tomatoes are high in lycopene, that's particularly associated with reduced risk of prostate cancer. The allium family, like onions and leeks and so forth, have organosulfur compounds that have anti-cancer properties. And of course, the dark-coloured berries also are high in antioxidants, which reduce the risk of cancer. Other foods and drinks to consider are nuts, lots of herbs and spices, and of course there's a lot of information on the health properties of turmeric. Coffee, I've mentioned before, if you enjoy it, then there's no reason not to have it, as long as you're not having it with lots of sugar and dairy and cream and so forth. Herbal teas, especially green teas, are really healthy. And incorporating flax seeds into the diet is really useful. It's high in lignans, which are these isoflavones that are associated with reduced risk of cancer, but also high in fibre and associated with reduced risk of high blood pressure, and useful for other chronic conditions as well. So it's really easy to make the Indian diet healthy and full of a variety of plant foods, and that's the key. It's not just about being vegan or vegetarian, it's about having a variety of healthy, minimally processed foods created in a way that's going to promote our health. So here are some examples for my daily life. So for breakfast, porridge is great, and you can make this with whole oats or millet or dahlia or amaranth. You can have chickpea flour type omelette, so something like besan chilla. You can have dosa, and obviously loads of fruits. For main meals, make sure you have lots of vegetables and include a healthy source of protein such as beans or soya or lentils or chickpeas in every meal. Try out and have a daily portion, if not more, of tofu or some sort of soya product. And reduce the reliance or eliminate the refined grains and shift them all to whole grains like brown rice and brown couscous and millet and things like that. And so you can have whole grain chapatis, you can have a tofu curry, chickpea and potato curry, a mung bean curry with brown rice and lots of salad, and of course a healthy dal. Some ideas for snacks. Obviously soups and salads are great, but always include some beans and lentils, dried fruits and nuts. You can make a vegan dokla and steam it and not use much oil. You can bake your bhajia and also make some oat and fruit cookies with wholemeal flour. So to summarise, we have a rising burden of cancer globally, and rates are rising in India. There's an ageing population and we've got an increasing incidence of cancer in young people. We're also suffering with more other chronic ill health like cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. And of course, the medical model used in Western countries is really to focus on treatment rather than prevention, whereas we could prevent a lot of these conditions and almost half of all cancers. So we really need to invest in policies that make these healthy lifestyle and environments accessible to all communities wherever you are in the world. And now I always include in my talks the topic of the current climate and ecological crisis. Our planet really is on fire, and the climate change issue is altering the risk of diseases that we're getting, and it will impact our risk of cancer. It will increase our risk of cancer, and really we need to focus in on healthy diet and lifestyle that's also good for the planet, because there are no healthy people on an unhealthy planet. And when studies have looked at the co-benefits of a sustainable diet, and the definition of a sustainable diet is a plant-based diet, really focusing on fruit, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, beans, seeds, and minimizing all animal-derived foods and of course processed foods which are not healthy. And this is a study from Europe but would be relevant for anywhere in the world. They showed that a healthy plant-based diet could reduce the risk of dying from any cause by up to 60%, and up to 40% of cancers could be prevented, whilst reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 50% and land use by 60%. So in summary, a large proportion of cancers are preventable. Diet and lifestyle factors are a major contributing issue, and we should be really using diet and lifestyle interventions in our clinical practice to impact cancer outcomes. And so my top tips are to eat a variety of healthy plant foods, swap meat for beans, add in soya foods, swap your dairy for soya milk, use loads of herbs and spices for the flavour but also for the healthy properties, add in a portion of nuts and seeds every day, exercise regularly, whatever you enjoy, it doesn't really matter, but some aerobic activity and strength building activity, and please avoid alcohol. So my organisation, plantbasedhealthprofessionals.com, which you can see the website address on the slide, has loads of fact sheets that you can access, loads of articles on the topics of cancer and also other chronic conditions that you're welcome to download and use and share for free. This is the course I run at the University of Winchester. It's 8 weeks online. I know some of your wider community from India have already taken the course. It's accredited for 30 hours of CPD from the British and the American Colleges of Lifestyle Medicine, so please do check that out online. And if you want to read more about my work and more about plant-based diets, we have 2 books now. On the left, a book I co-authored with my sister, which is really aimed at the general public, but anyone interested in healthy plant-based diets and answering all those common questions we always get asked about plant-based diets and vegan diets specifically. And on the right is a edited textbook on the topic of plant-based nutrition in clinical practice. It really was devised as a companion to my course, but it has both UK and international experts, and we hope that many healthcare institutions and healthcare professionals will find it useful, co-edited by myself, my sister Zara, and our colleague Lisa Simon, who's a registered dietitian. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope we have some time for some questions.